What did your parents teach you that you had to unlearn? Even though I'm a lefty, they insisted that I write with my right hand. They were convinced that it was the normal thing to do. It was a huge struggle writing with my right hand, as every impulse told me to use the left. Finally, as an adult, I learned to write with my left hand. It came so naturally that I never used the right again. How to not make friends. It was always emphasized that friends are meaningless and we should stick to ourselves and not talk to anyone else. Now, it's hard to make friends and keep them, or even have meaningful relationships with other people. That you don't have to use your turn signal if there's no one behind you. Got pulled over by a cop that was just sitting in his car on the side of the road. Learned from my dad how to be non-confrontational because of his explosive anger. I've come to realize not everyone gets irrationally angry when you confront them, so I'm working on that. My mother has a habit about talking about things like she's an expert. It wasn't until I hit my late teens she would make up without having proven or factual read about anything. Also, she's really gullible when it comes to polite people in administration. I've learned to question everything. I love my mom, but she wasn't and still isn't the most attentive housekeeper. I never really realized it until I was much older. I lived like a total slob for a long time. Then I met my ex with whom I have a son. She was / is a freaking cleanliness Nazi. It rubbed off though, because now I'm just as bad. I never realized how good having a very clean home is for your mental well-being. If I was feeling down, then I'd better keep it to myself, cause no one wants to hear it. I'm still trying to unlearn the unhealthy eating habits they taught me. When I was a teenager and beginning to work real jobs, my parents told me to never take a pay raise if it put you in a higher tax bracket and wasn't a big enough difference to cover the increased tax rate. They didn't understand that when you move up a tax bracket, only the income in that bracket is taxed at the higher rate. They were convinced that if you moved up a tax bracket then all of your income is taxed at the higher rate. I found that a ton of people actually think this. That if something breaks, that's it. You don't fix things in your house. Sink breaks? Brush teeth in the kitchen from now on. Especially never pay anyone to fix things. That it's normal to be a pack rat and have a messy house. I still get anxiety when getting rid of things I no longer use or clothes that no longer fit, but I have come a long way. Once my anxiety passes I feel so relieved that I no longer have all this stuff I have to move around or find a spot for. That you should always eat everything on your plate. When a boy is mean to you, it's because he likes you. People less fortunate that us are not bad people. Actually, once I figured out my old man was a hater, I did the opposite of what he did and my life worked out much better. That no one will help me when I need it, and that I'm not worth the resources / time / love of other people. That when boys used to hit me in elementary school, they liked me. That being on time is late. It sounds like a good skill, but when you get terrified and start shaking when you're reminded late to a movie, you realize you need to change that. My parents taught me that it doesn't matter how you look on the outside, it matters who you are inside. Q years of obesity and inattention to beauty standards. Turns out the first thing that people see when they meet you is your face, your body, and your clothes. The difference in treatment when you're attractive versus unattractive is stunning. They taught me a sweet, kind ideal, but goddang the world isn't as heartfelt as they are. When people ask you how you are doing, it is because they are being polite, not because they really care. Had to learn that some people ask because they really care. Oh god, where to start? That buying the cheapest thing in the least quantity for the lowest price right this moment is always the best strategy. That the Bible is 100% literal truth and completely without error or contradiction. That the gays got AIDS as a direct punishment from God, and that the high rate of depression and suicide is because they separated themselves from God. That trannies are even worse than the gays. That I, personally, was going to go to hell for eternity after suffering a life of horrible depression and dying early of AIDS or suicide, which would be my own fault. That the earth is 6,000 years old, tops, and on and on. My parents are some of the most judgy people I've ever met, especially about people's looks. I'm always hearing them say like, "That is not a pretty woman," or with disgust, "Is that a man or a woman?" about strangers, just about every time I hang out with them. It makes me mad, honestly. I've been careful not to pick that up from them. Religion. My family is hardcore Roman Catholic. When I was younger, grade school to high school, my aunt would drag me to processions. We walk for miles holding candles, while singing chants. I thought that was normal. She wanted us to follow what the church would tell us to do. When I left home for college, and did my own study about religions, I became agnostic, and realized everything we did was weird. Still don't have the balls to tell them my religious views. They would flip. My parents never wanted to listen to kids' music, so they would change song lyrics and just sing them loudly over the songs when I was in the car. The most notable was the Jimmy Buffett song that goes, "Why don't we get drunk and screw," which they changed to, "Why don't we get lunch at school." I was king 20 before I finally figured out Jimmy wasn't interested in eating hot lunch on a waterbed, and Eric Clapton wasn't actually singing about hanging out with a woman named Jarlene. Edit. I still definition sing cocaine with my dad's silly lyrics. She don't lie, she got big furry thighs, Jarlene, all the time. Edit 2. My dad needed the internet to know the second verse of his child-friendly version of Cocaine goes, "Don't forget this fact, she's got a smelly crack, Jarlene. Whatever happens, don't spend money." It was a king breakthrough in therapy when I figured out that if I have a problem and I can fix it by buying something I can afford, then it's okay to buy things. To try to finish people's sentences. My mom would sometimes get lost/stuck in the middle of her sentence, so my sisters and I would finish the sentence for her, since we could usually guess what she was trying to say. But for most people, this would just be annoying. Not my parents, but my grandpa used to tell me that if I didn't step off of an escalator quick enough, it would me under. Had an irrational fear of escalators for years. That whole constructive criticism is personal. You got a C on a project? It's because you're an idiot, you're not good enough, you're not as smart as your brother, etc. I can barely read corrections on my papers without having a mental breakdown. Even something simple as, "Try to word this better next time," sends alarms in my brain that I'm a huge idiot who can't even write a paper. Constructive criticisms are just things to help you do better next time. It's not a personal attack. If you need to know something, they'll teach it in school. Don't screw something up by trying to fix it yourself. Always call a professional. You have problems. We don't have problems. Everyone else in this family is normal. Directing biting, hostile comments and insults at your family every day. Catastrophizing when everyday inconveniences occur. Defeatism/taking everything as a cosmic sign of your bad luck. Spilling milk on the kitchen counter and floor equals I can just never get ahead in life. An actual recent quote. Ruminating over old minor slides endlessly, for years. Do you remember the time your grandma said insert fairly literal comment here? No mom, I gave her the benefit of the doubt that she didn't mean anything by it, and also that happened literally 20 years ago. That I'm super smart. That I won't be able to relate to normal people and will have a hard time making friends because I'm so far above them. That being smart was the only thing that mattered, and my sister was somehow lesser than me because she is a social butterfly, but not super bright. That things like attractiveness and social grace were superfluous and only used by people who weren't smart enough to not need them. I placed too much value on intellect and not nearly enough on kindness, humility, empathy, etc. for far too much of my life. I'm 28 now and still unlearning a lot of that bull. Leaving that safe zone of, "I'm smart so I'm fine" is hard because you have to take a long look at all the other areas where you're lacking, but it's necessary. Once you finish school, no one gives a how smart you are. Be a good person. Making the world a better place is so much more important than stroking your own ego. I've built my own computer. I spent several weeks reading about them in my own time to learn how they work, because I'm genuinely interested in them and love to learn as much as I can. I use them every day of my life, have grown up around them, and am constantly explaining to you how things work. But yes mom, Trust that one tech that came in 5 years ago that told you Rose's laptop was eating all the internet and left without doing anything and default back to that explanation every single time it stops working. Yes, me turning off 3 of my monitors will speed it up for everybody because you know how bandwidth works more than I do.